struggling with your campaigns? Maybe they're not performing as well as you thought they would. Well, luckily for you, the team at Xgrowth have nailed the art of account-based marketing. So if you'd like to know more about how you can hop on the ABM train, book a free consultation with the account-based marketing experts at Xgrowth to help you get started with your ABM journey today. What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from Xgrowth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. I'm Shaheen Hoda with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Courtney Scales, Global Director of Marketing Operations and Campaigns at Repit, about navigating your brand and marketing function through M&A. Now, Courtney has been part of Repit for a while, and it's gone through a fair bit when it comes to M&A. So I'm really excited to hear her take on this and how she has navigated that landscape. Courtney, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So, if you could give the audience a little bit of background of yours in terms of why are we talking about M&A and what has been your background with M&A? I think that is going to set the scene. It's just a really quick, 30-second overview, but I think it's going to set the scene for everything else that we're going to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a part of Repit for a number of years now. The company that I was with previously was acquired by Repit back in 2021. And really why I wanted to talk about M&A today, and particularly M&A in the marketing space, is based on my experiences. So in the last few years, Repit has acquired quite a number of companies in the property technology space in Australia and New Zealand. And it has been a very exciting and challenging ride going through, this transition. And, as M&A trends increase globally, I think it's a really great topic to talk to, because I found that there's not a lot of, advice or content out there, specifically talking to it from a marketing point of view, from the perspective of marketers who are coming into businesses that may or may not have marketing functions previously. And how do you join them together to move from startup to scale up to maturity?
I love it. Okay. Talking about joining them together, let's talk about alignment on objectives, right? That's where I would like to start. So let's say I'd like to know how you go about aligning the brand messaging and the marketing goals in the early stages of a merger or acquisition. A company comes in, or acquirer basically acquires a company, and then there needs to be an alignment on those fronts. So how can you talk a little bit about how you would go about establishing that alignment?
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective, it's sort of broken up into two categories. So one is your messaging and your goals, as you mentioned. So with regards to messaging, what we found to work quite effectively, especially with brands that, have or haven't had any marketing previously, it's all been done internally by different teams, and there's not actually a brand book or brand guidelines, is to really look at creating messaging maps and effectively a messaging tree and how that all relates up to your parent brand. So say, for example, no brand documentation exists. What we did was we studied current collateral and, working with the sales team really closely to understand why it's not converting. So, from your web pages, your ebooks, your blogs, as well as the sales enablement. We also looked at the market research, so creating sort of a common set of words and phrases that your clients as well as your competitors use online at events or in person. And one thing that I found really insightful was to look across testimonials, across your own and your competitors, as well as customer complaints across the board, because you can really get some good gold nuggets in there. In addition to that, you look at your search research. So, what are the common phrases? What's trending? And, going back to your value proposition, and circling it back into, the value prop. So how does those messages, do they or don't they tie back into the product mix? And really, what are those key drivers of value that you are currently touching on or you may be missing? Then what we do is we use a tool called Miro to map these key phrases out and see how we can incorporate them into those messaging maps, which we then test in advertising to add to our key assets, so websites, battle cards, enablement, etc. And then we listen on our sales calls and our customer support calls to understand, what are our teams using? How does us as the marketing team, how does that message filter down throughout the rest of the organization? Because whilst it's great to ensure that you've got, everything on the front of the house, if it's not filtering down into your culture, something's being missed there that you need to address. Then taking a look at your goals as that second piece. In an acquisition, you're likely to have a budget that's been committed to during the sale process. Those key revenue numbers really form the basis of where your goals need to align. Then we create our marketing plans to align it around those products and the product roadmap to create a consistent flow across your brand, your product marketing, and your demand generation. The goals from the product roadmaps and the revenue targets need to combine with the market research that I mentioned earlier in your sort of messaging map analysis so that you can create that cohesive plan that looks at all those key measures and then also what drives value the most to have the most impact for the business. While it sounds like a lot of work and it really, really is,
It does.
you need to... The most important thing to keep in mind is to keep it simple. You really can't afford to be caught in analysis paralysis. So if you do the hard work at the upfront, it really sets yourself up for success as you kind of move forward into that test and optimize phase. For us and all the products that we have, they generally form a part of quite a similar sales process. So aligning that revenue goals and messaging goals to make sure you have a really close alignment with sales is essential to making sure that you're driving value from day one.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What do you think is a realistic timeline for an alignment that you just talked about?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I think you see a wide range in the marketplace where it could be, just very quickly a company gets acquired and everything gets dismantled and absorbed in the organization.
Yeah.
Or the other extreme where it's just the company continues running at with its own brand and its own objectives and its own, everything. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So generally, during an acquisition, there will be a preset of defined communications. So commonly, you'll see a press release go out. There may be logos that get updated with, any sub-branding on them from the parent company and some smaller sort of cues to the market that generally signify that you have been acquired. So those kind of things happen, within the first week or couple of weeks of acquisition. Where it comes down to from a timeline point of view is, I guess, twofold. One is what the brand strategy is that has been directed from your parent company as a part of the sales process. And two is, I suppose, where you're currently sitting in your financial year cycle. If you are lucky enough to sort of start off the new financial year with the acquisition or very early into that, you can align everything that I've mentioned earlier to your business plan for the year. But if it hasn't, if you're in the middle of the year, you're still going to have to do those plans, but maybe you need to look at it a little bit differently and look at it from a branding perspective. So there may be certain brands that have more brand equity than others in the marketplace. For example, in our region, Reapit is a very new brand. And so we really did a lot of research to look at the brand equity of each of those, what are the drivers of brand value, and to help us determine how quickly or slowly we should be moving and changing everything over if the goal is consolidation. That really helps to determine, I suppose, how quickly or slowly things need to move. But I guess bringing it back down to brass tacks, the 30, 60, 90-day plans I always find to be a really helpful tool, not just so that you don't go mad because it's a really busy time when a new business is acquired, you're meeting with so many people, there's so much to absorb and learn, and making sure that you're keeping it to the essential things. What are your big rocks that you need to achieve as a part of the acquisition, and ensuring that you're holding yourself accountable to those.
Got it. Courtney, how do you approach? And I don't know if this is part of your experience, where it definitely sounds like, from some of the things that you mentioned, it definitely sounds like you've worked or acquired companies that maybe did not have a very mature marketing. I don't know if you have experience of like merging companies that do have a fairly mature marketing function, but I'm keen to kind of hear from your side, what are your thoughts are in terms of the differences between the two, from the marketing leadership in the acquiring company?
So I think, ultimately it comes down to people. So when you join a company or you're acquired, or you're the acquirer, it comes down to the people that you have in that team. If the company that you're coming from has a mature marketing organization, it is quite easy to then sort of spread your processes and your methodologies across, and bring the maturity up in other orgs that don't necessarily have that level of maturity. However, if you are coming from the side where, you might be the one-man band that's holding everything together, and you're coming into a big marketing team from an acquired perspective, I would say the most important thing is to be open, be honest, be transparent. Not everything is going to be perfect, and that's okay. But approaching things with a purposeful curiosity and, an openness and a willingness to learn, I think is really important. Oftentimes, if it's been your patch for such a long time, it's your passion, it's your baby, and it can be difficult for individuals to sort of let go of some things, but that's all just a part of growth. Growth and change is difficult, and you need to get on board with that.
I love it. It sounds like you've already had this conversation with a couple of people, which I would have loved to be. I would love to see that conversation. But I mean, talking about change, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. What are some of the key approaches to change management in marketing during an M&A?
Yeah, so there's a common phrase that's used in therapy, such as perception and perspective. Me personally, I'm quite an anxious person, and it's really taken me years to learn the difference between the two. But educating your teams is really important, and being an empathetic leader is really crucial during these change management pieces. If your org doesn't have a change management plan, then create one for your team. It's up to you as a leader to drive this change yourself. It's not just going to happen. Yes, it will definitely mean that you have to be more high touch, and you have to check in more regularly, with your team than you perceive that you have time for. But ultimately, change management is a really big rock that you need to make time for. You can't just focus on the work to get to the revenue numbers. You really have to take care of your team. And when I say team, you really have two teams as a leader. You have your marketing team, but you also have your peers, so the leadership team. And you do need to put just as much effort into both, which really means, doing the work to create your plans, making them accessible, marketing 101 training for the org, who are your people, what do they do, what's your roadmap, how do you like working? And, you can't sell a secret, so make sure that you tell your teams. I have a bit of an example of this that I would love to share. When the company that I originally started at, Console, was acquired into Reapit, one of our sister products had quite a bad experience with, marketing in the past. They didn't have the right people to demonstrate the value of marketing and what can it do for sales. And honestly, winning them over was a year-long battle. Learning to sell to your internal stakeholders, building trust, building relationships, being empathetic, and sticking to your guns where it matters is important. We have a mantra in our business, strong opinions loosely held. If the data tells you that you're wrong, then you're wrong, and you need to make a change. But it's important that everyone has the courage of conviction. But if there is data that suggests otherwise, then you do need to adapt. When I was speaking to a head of sales recently, he very kindly said that he didn't know marketing could be like this, a science. And he was really appreciative that, we'd taken the time and the effort to bring him along for the journey and change his mind. It's really when you look at readings online or do a bit of study on acquisitions, there's some really obvious things. Be open, change is going to happen, just go with the flow, but make sure you regularly communicate. People take this for granted, but it is so crucial, so crucial to get right. A lot of startups assume that marketing is sales or that marketing is communication. And to be honest, a lot of marketers I've met have thought that marketing is communications. It's just one aspect of what we do. It's not who we are. To me, I would say that marketing is the glue for the customer experience. It's how people interact with your brand and how. It's every touch point and interaction. And you can put out all the press releases, blogs, and change all the colors that you want. But if your experience is shit, then your brand is shit. And I think the other thing to mention is financial literacy. So educating your team on the commercials of your business is really important. Oftentimes during an acquisition, cost is a big thing that's looked at, but you need to get your team up to date with how your org is measuring success and what you're being held accountable for. It will help give them context as to why they can't have this shiny new toy or why we're not going to market with a feature or a product that seems really obvious to them. It's really your responsibility to give them that context where appropriate and help them to understand. Once they understand how it works, they'll have a lot more understanding and buy-in into how we get there, and they'll be along for the ride with you.
I love that. Yeah, managing the team very closely, I think, is very critical. Over communicating.
It's not micromanagement. Oh, sorry.
No, I know I said managing the team. Definitely didn't mean that, but managing the team's thoughts and that almost now sounds a little bit utopian. But just making sure that the team, just like you said, understand what is coming and have a good understanding of that. But basically managing that understanding, I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is really critical.
Yeah, if you're not open and transparent, whispers start to happen, and whispers are something that you can't control. So if you are open and honest and transparent where you can be, and also calling out where you can't be, that's okay too. Your team will respect you for it, and they will feel like you're not hiding things from them, and that they'll buy into it more broadly than if you sort of wait for everything to be perfect and wait to present this big thing. It's okay if it's not perfect at the start, but just be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes plenty of sense. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, have you been in situations that maybe there is an acquisition that happens and there is a massive, maybe is not the right word, but there is a clash between your messaging and the new company's messaging, or there is a clash in some shape or form, might be outside of messaging as well? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, for sure. It's very, very common. If, say, for example, you're in the middle of financial year and you've been acquired and you've got your roadmap, your whole company's got their roadmap that they're working towards, and suddenly you're acquired and, everything changes. There may be people in the teams that don't want to come along for the ride and, are putting out messages that, are separate to the messages that you're hoping to convey. It's really important to identify those people and have those conversations and make sure that everybody is in the same boat. Like, you need to be making sure that you're paddling in the right direction. The worst thing is if you set sail and there's a mutiny on board, what are you going to do?
Good luck. Good luck with mutiny on board. Well,
yeah, and it happens. That's life. It happens. But, you really ultimately, a business is about dealing with people. You need to understand the why. I think that's what you took in sales about the 5 whys, like why, and then you get to the root of the problem. If you get down to that 5th why, oftentimes it's just fear of change, fear of job security. Like that's a really big one. Fear of the thing that people have spent so much of their life and their passion into building and growing, changing, and then not being a part of the ride. You really need to, that's why I mentioned empathy is just so important, because you need to have those empathetic conversations and honest and transparent conversations where you can, so that you can bring people along for the ride and just shift from that, perception to perspective sort of approach.
Absolutely. Courtney, I have some rapid fire questions for you, but before we get there, is there anything else on, really navigating that brand and marketing function through, an M&A that you think we should touch on, or maybe I didn't ask that you think it's important to cover?
Doing your homework. I think I mentioned that initially. You've got to do your homework. You really have to understand, the businesses that have been acquired, or your business that's been acquired, or you acquiring other bit. They've been acquired for a reason. They may have an awesome customer base, an awesome product, whatever it is. There's something about them that makes them special, and you really need to do your due diligence as a marketer and understand exactly what that is. Oftentimes, the messaging may not be perfect. Even for established brands, we can fall into something that, I kind of call corporate sadness. Once you get too big, you start to get stuffy and put in all this bureaucracy around your messaging because you're afraid of saying anything, or you're saying a lot but not really enough. You really need to dive down into, I guess, what it is that makes your product special, what it is that makes your customers special, and tying those together to create brands that have longevity.
Corporate sadness. I like that. I like that. I'm going to steal that. Fantastic.
You're welcome.
Did you know that 65% of marketing leaders in APAC view ABM as a crucial part of their marketing spend? And that the emergence of generative AI is transforming the marketing landscape? Want to learn more marketing insights? Well, download the 2023 State of Account-Based Marketing in APAC report with the link in the pod description. You'll have valuable data points and key takeaways all at your fingertips after the single click of the download button. Get your copy now and find out how you can transform your ABM game today.
Let's do some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
First question I have is, what is one resource? This could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a TikTok that has had a profound impact on the way that you either work or live. What comes to mind?
It's not just one, and I hate to be that guy, but it's not just one. I do have a couple.
Let's do it.
Yeah, all right. So I would say one for me is definitely Mark Ritson. I think he's just such a fantastic marketer. I don't always agree with everything that he says, but I really find his approach to communication so refreshing. So much of what we absorb online as marketers is either, kind of Gary Vee sort of style, or it's market research papers that sort of, make your eyes cross. I really like the way that he approaches things because he's so refreshing in the way that he talks. He talks to you as though he's having a conversation with you. And I think that's a really powerful way that you can sort of approach your own marketing, because ultimately, especially in B2B, it is such a direct relationship, and applying that into your marketing is essential. There is a fantastic research paper that always sticks with me that I read during my undergrad. I couldn't find it. I wanted to mention it, but I couldn't find it. But essentially, it talks about the use of over-complex jargon and terminology to really hide the fact that people don't know what they're talking about. And I use that as a great yardstick. If people can't speak to you like a person when they communicate, and they try to make something over-complicated and inaccessible, they're hiding something. And it's often a roadblock to something else. I would say I also read quite a lot of Harvard Business Review articles, and it's definitely showing my age here, but I do absorb quite a lot of TikToks about the industry. There's so many fantastic people online that may not have the fancy degree, but have just such an incredible insight into a niche topic, particularly technology. And, I guess that's the wonders of the internet, really. More specifically, I guess an account I've been following online has been The Social Juice. He puts out some short snippets just on industry changes and trends that are happening from, the major advertising platforms, and trends with millennials and Gen Z buyers. And I find it a really refreshing take on giving those insights. He also provides his opinion and perspective on things, and I find that really refreshing, that it's not just sort of a statement of the facts. It's somebody giving their perspective, which I find quite cool. And, ultimately, you can always go back to the greats, Kotler, Porter, etc. If anyone's listening hasn't studied their work before, I highly recommend it. It'll save you hours in formulating your strategies.
Fantastic. That was a comprehensive answer.
I know.
Thank you.
For a one question.
No, you're good. You're good. This is great stuff. Second question: if you could give one piece of advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
Be kind. Be kind. Don't sit in the marketing ivory tower. Don't be that marketer. Get your hands dirty. Speak to people. Try new things. And don't be afraid to break stuff. But if you do break stuff, have a backup plan. Be a great communicator. Be transparent and honest. And lead with empathy and have fun. We're not brain surgeons. We're selling products and services. Bring the joy into marketing and live with passion. But be kind.
I love it. I love it. Question 3. Who are some of the influencers? I mean, you already mentioned Mark Ritson. I don't know if there are anybody else that comes to mind, but who are some of the influencers that you follow in this space?
Yeah, Mark Ritson for sure. Chase Diamond, he does a lot on sales methodologies, particularly in B2B marketing for email marketing, which I find really helpful. He puts out a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Neil Patel, of course, the SEO god. There's a great podcast that I listen to as well called The Consumer VC. They interview, similar to this podcast, they interview some really interesting people in the venture capital side of the world and sort of how to navigate some of the go-to-market challenges there. And, of course, some of the micro-influencers online. Shout out to micro-influencers.
Micro-influencers. I love it. Last question. What is something that excites you about B2B today?
Yeah. The technology. I'm a big tech nerd, and I feel like we're finally starting to bridge the gap between B2C and B2B, and I'm really excited for all the changes. The evolution in the B2B space, from 10, 20 years ago, from really just being ABM to being so much more is what really excites me, and how technology enables us to do that. Bringing the personality into B2B brands and humanizing them, from that corporate sadness that I mentioned that exists out there today is what really excites me for the future of B2B marketing.
Courtney, this has been an amazing conversation. I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing all this great insight. No, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make the show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shaheen Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just keen for a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week right here on Growth Colony.